Okay, today's ride goes from near the confluence of the Hawea and Clutha River, which is right here. Track starts just here, and then we come all the way down the Clutha River here on the true left bank and finish here at the bridge by the Clutha River. The ride is about 12-15k, but if you do this ride, typically most people will cross over the river here and then come back up this side, which is the Upper Clutha Track, back to where we started. And then if you do a loop round back into Wanaka here, typically that loop would be about 42k. Non-technical ride, couple of areas down in here where there have been some slips come down over the track, and that has caused some burying of the track in here, but otherwise very non-technical track and nice scenery, lovely view of the Clutha River on its way out of Lake Wanaka and down to the sea. Okay, let's go. So the ride today is down the Newcastle track, 12k, follows the Clutha River down on the true left bank, I believe, and we'll head off and give you some commentary as we go. The Hawea River on our right here that we would have, or any of you have seen some of the earlier videos would have seen coming out of Lake Hawea. It's dammed for hydro storage. That's the river heading down. It joins into the Clutha about a kilometre downstream, and we'll see that shortly. Right. See what this country's like when there is no irrigation water applied to it. We get to the top of this terrace in front of us, you'll get an idea of how it responds when you apply water. Morning, hiya. And there's the difference when you apply water to this country. This is now running dairy cows. Look at the difference between one side of the fence to the other. It's a lot of ryegrass clover and lucerne, or in North America they call it alfalfa. Very deep rooting, so it can get down deep and extract water, last a lot longer in dry periods, but Not so much of a need now with irrigation water. A few short years ago this was all like the country you see in front, but now it's intensive dairy farming. Okay, now that we've climbed up those couple of small terraces up onto one of the main terraces above the Clutha, we're now going to head down the Clutha River and we'll end up near the Luggate township, a little red bridge there that crosses the river again. So we're now going to head down past this dairy farm that you can see here in front of us. This is the Devon Dairy Farm. It runs as far down here as you can see on these terraces and the ones slightly higher up, all the way down into the far distance towards those hills. Farm's about 5,000 hectares or 11,000 acres in old money, and they run around about 5,000 milking cows on this farm in 5 separate units. So there's 5 separate dairy sheds. You can see one in the distance, way over here at the bottom of that terrace. These cows produce somewhere between 450 to 500 kilograms of milk solids per year. So that's a couple of million kilograms of milk solids off this one farm, and the current milk price is anywhere from $6 to $8 a kilogram. That's New Zealand dollars. So, you know, typical good year, these guys might be grossing $16 million per annum, New Zealand dollars. So it's a pretty big income stream, but huge costs, of course. Labour, power, pumping all this water. This land in front of us here, this beautiful green irrigated pasture these cows are grazing on, used to look like this only a few short years ago, but because milk prices are so high, the dairy industry in New Zealand has exploded, and a lot of land up here that was previously dry land farming is now growing dairy cows, as we can see here. Here's the Clutha River below us. Very popular for recreation this time of year. You're not allowed down here on jet skis because of commercial jet boat traffic that take tourists down here on high-speed trips from Lake Wanaka all the way down to roughly the Luggate Red Bridge where we'll be finishing. But beautiful river, incredibly clear water. It's running fairly high at the moment, so most of the big rocks are submerged, so no navigation hazards. And you can see back to the landscape where Lake Wanaka there in the distance, below these mountains of course. Round to this direction over here, Lake Hawea is up there between those two, Mount Maud on the left and the mountain range on the right. So that's Lake Hawea up there. That's the rugged peak up here, that's Mount Gold. This is the peninsula, this strip of brownish coloured land here, that's the peninsula in Lake Wanaka, and on this side of it is Stevenson's Arm, on the other side is the main lake. The range in the background with the speckled snow, that's the Buchanan Range. Treble Cone, the ski field here with just a few flecks of snow left on the top of it. That's one of the local ski areas here. Anyway, we shall now head south and watch the kayaker in the river, trying to paddle back upstream. Looks like fairly hard work. Anyway, let's keep moving. As you can see over to the my left, there's an awful lot of irrigation going on, so you can imagine the power consumption that this farm must have over 5,000 hectares of land, 11,000 acres. These guys obviously consume so much power with all the pumps and things they have to run. They've put in their own solar farm, which we may get to see in a subsequent video where I've fly the drone so you can get a look at it. Covers about half an acre or so of an area, so it's a pretty significant power source for these guys, I guess. A lot of sunshine hours here, so probably very economic for them to do it. But this is what you've got to do to turn this sort of territory and land into that will feed highly productive dairy cows. One interesting thing about all these gorgeous girls here is that they stay outside all year round, so pretty resilient animals. None of these animals are kept indoors during the winter, at which time there's many days here in the winter where it's sub-zero, below freezing, but all these cows are outside all year round, which I guess is one of the reasons our milk is so competitive all over the world. We don't have to bring in a lot of artificial feed, we grow it all here, and we don't have to winter the animals indoors. It doesn't get that cold. It's pretty cold, but not cold enough they have to be indoors. You notice they're all wearing collars with a little tag hanging underneath. I'm assuming these cows all get scanned when they go into the milking shed each morning. They're milked twice a day, morning and late afternoon, and that tag around the neck is probably their ID, so they can record exactly how much production each cow is generating, and I guess that's how they maintain the herd at its optimum milking. What a bunch of gorgeous cows. Cute. So we're just leaving dairy country on our left, continuing on down the riverbank, and see if we can find some nice spots to give you a good look at the Clutha River. New Zealand's largest river by volume. It's not the longest is the Waikato in the North Island, but this is the second longest, but it's the biggest by volume. It's certainly got very, very clean, pure water coming out of the lake. Gives you a bit of perspective in terms of how wide the Clutha Valley is. It's pretty wide. I'm not sure what it is in kilometres, but it's a very broad valley. A lot of these flat river terraces. Very productive land if you can get water onto them, which isn't much of a problem here. Just got to dig down to find an aquifer with a drilling rig. Further down the valley, lots of wine growing, cherries, apricots, stone fruit, hip fruit. Big export earners as well, especially the cherries go to China for the New Year, Christmas celebrations. It's a very high value crop. Can't get much drone footage of this riding track, because up to our right on some of the one of the terraces up here is the local airport, hence no fly zone. So you can't get a drone airborne here. But we'll be getting some drone footage at the beginning of the trail to give you some orientation, and down at the bottom end where the flight restrictions don't exist. Small airport here, only turboprop aircraft, no jet traffic here. There is a plan to put up a new airport near Taurus, a few kilometres from here, which a lot of people are resisting. A lot of people not interested in having a lot of tourism development in this part of the world. I think a lot of people like it the way it is, relatively undeveloped and uncluttered by all things tourism. Helicopter traffic here is pretty high. Lots of helicopters operating out of this area, taking hunters into the hills up behind us, where the mountains we saw earlier, or on scenic trips, and they are spectacular once you get into the mountains here. Highly recommended if you ever get out here and want to see some jaw-dropping scenery, the sort of stuff you saw in Lord of the Rings. Some of that was filmed up around here as well. These piles of rocks that you can see here in front of us are all old tailings from the gold mining that used to take place along the banks of this river back in the 1800s. A lot of people flocked to the Otago province because there was a gold rush here, and these are tailings from either where they've been sluicing by hand. I don't believe there were river dredges in this part of the Clutha, but there may well have been, I'm not sure. But yeah, these are all old mine tailings from sluicing along the banks of the Clutha River for gold. I don't know what amount of gold was pulled out of the river here, but there are still people mining, but most of them are hobbyists, little floating suction dredges. But yeah, in pockets all along this river, there's evidence of early mining like this. A lot of these early miners were Chinese as well. A lot of the Chinese population that established in New Zealand very early on came here to Otago, not just around here, but over in the Queenstown, Arrowtown area, and all over here when the gold rush was on. Might be able to hear that helicopter in the background. Obviously someone getting lessons. One of the reasons obviously drone activity here is forbidden. Low flying helicopters and fixed wing aircraft and drones don't mix. Apocalypse now, here it comes. Another nice view of the river, looking over towards the Cardrona Valley, straight through there. 45 kilometres, there's Queenstown. This is the Pisa range up here, which is usually snow-capped in winter. And you can see an extensive shrubland of Manuka and Kānuka here in the foreground on the other side of the river, and the usual willows along the edge. We're going to be following this terrace around here, and then we'll head over into the deep shadow there where those big slips and all that erosion is, where the track has been buried multiple times by massive slips coming off that terrace face in heavy rainfall events. Good fun. Let's keep moving. These gravel terrace escarpments you can see in front of us have had some very large erosion events come down out of them from heavy rainfall. Pretty loose, unconsolidated gravel, and once it starts to flow with the water, down it comes. This trail used to be quite flat through here, but it's been repeatedly inundated by thousands of cubic metres of material coming out of these gorges. They're small gorges, just gullies, but a lot of material. So if the track's going to be damaged after recent rains, this is where it'll be, up in here. Oh yeah, it's been a lot more material deposited here very recently. The stream never used to be here. It's obviously been diverted by the recent material that's come down. This is all very fresh. Yeah, I'd say there's several metres of new material come down here. This track hasn't even been worn into this yet by bikes. You can see where some cyclists have been, but yeah, there's been a lot of new material. Notice how it buries the trees. This is probably the most challenging part of the Newcastle track, because as you can see there is no real track here, and the reason is most of what we're standing on came from up there, and in periods of very high rainfall, the stuff that was up there in that terrace gets washed down here and covers the track in this very large fist-sized bouldery material. And the original track here is probably 5 to 10 metres beneath our feet. So a huge amount of material that's come down. I'm sure we're going to see some more of this, and there's another big slip around here that happened about 3 years ago. Doesn't appear anything's come down on that though, the track is still in place. The track is probably about 10 or 15 metres underneath this gravel is where its original course used to be. And here we are looking back upstream. See the lower reaches of that slip, that's all new material. It never used to come down into the river like that, so there's been a lot of fresh gravel debris. This is all moraine from the glaciers. You can see how mixed it is in terms of the size of the rocks and boulders and pebbles. So not long, down the river here, along the bottom of this big terrace scarp and around the bottom, and we'll come out pretty close to the Luggate bridge. More about that shortly. About a kilometre to go to the end of the track. As you can see, we're looking at some of the hills we were looking at earlier in the ride. Mount Maud straight ahead. This one here, Mount Gold. And you can see the terraces that the river's carved here over thousands of years that it's been flowing out of the lake since the ice melted about 20,000 years ago. Through this dry lands, probably about another kilometre, and we'll be at the Luggate Red Bridge where the ride ends. Our little European rabbit friends. Come out riding around here early in the morning, you'll see hundreds of them. They're a real pest here. introduced by the early settlers when they first arrived in New Zealand and in this part of the world. Dry climate, the nearest thing we've got to a Mediterranean style climate. They absolutely proliferated here. There were millions of them, and so many in some cases they almost forced some of the farmers off their land. They just ate everything in this part of the world. And up in the Mackenzie country, whole hillsides would just be moving with rabbits. There were just hundreds of thousands of them on some farms. And there we have it, the Luggate Red Bridge. Not very red anymore. It's needs a new paint job. It's typically red. It's the only way to get across the Clutha River down here south of Wanaka till you get a lot further down around Cromwell. There's another bridge there, but yeah, not many crossings over this river. And here we are at the end of the Newcastle track.